It was supposed to be just another quiet afternoon at the Grand Elms Hotel. The lobby was polished, the staff moved like clockwork, and guests checked in and out without fuss. Among the many employees keeping things running smoothly was Leela, a soft-spoken, humble cleaner who had worked there for nearly 3 years. She rarely spoke unless spoken to, and she was known more for her quick smile than for drawing any kind of attention. But everything changed the moment she answered a ringing phone no one else seemed to notice. It happened so fast. A hotel guest had left their phone on the reception counter while stepping away, and after a few minutes it began to ring. Most staff wouldn't dare touch a guest's belongings, but Leela, seeing that no one else was around, picked it up, just intending to help. She said a simple hello, in fluent Dutch, not realizing that someone across the room had turned to look at her with sudden interest. That someone just happened to be one of the world's most discreet billionaires, known not only for his wealth, but for always traveling under the radar. No one at the hotel had even recognized him yet, but he noticed her. Leela had no idea who he was. She finished the call quickly, politely, and went back to folding towels like nothing had happened. But the man couldn't stop thinking about what he had just heard. Dutch, fluent, confident, and spoken by someone who clearly didn't belong in just one world. There was something different about her, and he knew it instantly. A woman working as a cleaner in a luxury hotel, speaking a language most of the other staff didn't understand. It sparked something in him. Curiosity, maybe, or something more. That night, the billionaire made a quiet phone call of his own. The next morning, the hotel manager came searching for Leela. No explanation, just a message. He wants to speak with you. Privately. Leela, confused and slightly nervous, followed the manager up to the penthouse suite, not knowing what to expect. What could a billionaire possibly want with a hotel cleaner? Was she in trouble for answering that call, or had she just been noticed in a way that would change her life forever? One moment, she was folding towels in silence. The next, she was being summoned to the top floor by a man whose decisions moved markets. And what he would ask her next would leave her speechless. Leela stepped into the elevator, her hands still damp from the cleaning cloth she'd been using just minutes ago. The hotel manager didn't say much, just pressed the button for the top floor and gave her a small, tight smile. The silence inside the elevator felt heavier than usual. She'd never been to the penthouse before. That floor was reserved for VIP guests, people with names that only appeared in headlines or on bank reports. What could they possibly want with her? She tried to calm her thoughts, brushing away the idea that she might have done something wrong. Still, her mind ran through every possible mistake she might have made had she spoken out of turn, touched something she shouldn't have. But no, she'd only answered a call. Just one word in Dutch, that was it. When the elevator doors opened, the hallway felt like another world. Quiet, with thick carpet and dim lights. The manager led her to a door and knocked once before turning the handle. Inside, the room looked more like a private apartment than a hotel suite. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city's skyline. In front of them stood a tall man in a dark blazer, hands in his pockets, back turned. He turned slowly when she entered. Leela didn't recognize him, but something about the way he looked at her made her heart skip. His eyes were sharp, calm, but clearly searching for something in her. He motioned for her to sit, and she did, still confused, still silent. "My name is Willem," he said simply. "I was in the lobby yesterday. I heard you speak Dutch." She nodded, unsure if she should say more. "Yes, it's my first language." "I figured," he said, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "But not something I expected to hear here. You don't meet many cleaners fluent in Dutch, especially not in a city like this." Leela glanced at the floor. She wasn't embarrassed, just unsure of where this was going. She'd learned early on that not everyone appreciated a woman with a complicated past, or a sharp mind hiding behind a uniform. Willem didn't press further. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, studying her like she was a piece of a puzzle he was trying to solve. "Leela," he said after a pause. If I asked you what you did before this job, would you tell me the truth? She looked up, startled. No one had ever asked her that. Most people assumed she was just another worker passing through, someone invisible. How did he know there was more? Her throat tightened, and before she could speak, he added, because I think you're not who you pretend to be. And just like that, the walls around her past started shaking. Leela hesitated, the room suddenly feeling smaller, like the walls were leaning in. She hadn't heard those words in years, words that touched a part of her she kept buried deep. She studied Willem's face, trying to read his intent. He didn't seem threatening. He wasn't prying in a cruel way. If anything, he looked curious, like he had pieces of a story but not the whole picture. I used to work in translation, she said softly. Freelance, mostly remote, sometimes contracts with international firms. Willem nodded, not surprised. That makes sense. You sounded trained, professional. She wasn't sure how to respond. It was the truth, but it wasn't the whole story. And she couldn't figure out why this man, a billionaire staying under an alias, cared so much about her background. What did he see in a hotel cleaner? Meanwhile, down on the lobby floor, whispers had already started. Staff noticed Leela had disappeared mid-shift, escorted by the manager to the top floor. A few of them exchanged theories. Some thought she was being fired. Others guessed she'd won the attention of a guest. No one really knew, but in a place like this, gossip traveled faster than room service. Back in the penthouse, Willem stood up and walked to the window. I used to work in intelligence, he said, his voice low. Retired now. Mostly. But I still see patterns. I recognize people trying to stay hidden. That made her heart stop. I'm not hiding, Leela said quickly. I just needed to start over. Starting over is fine, he replied. But starting over without looking over your shoulder means you're not really in danger anymore. Leela froze. She hadn't spoken about her past in over 5 years. Not since she left Amsterdam after something went terribly wrong. Something she never reported, something that forced her to disappear. She'd changed her name, taken up quiet jobs, kept to herself. This hotel had been her safest place, until now. Willem finally turned to face her. I think we're both people who've lived lives others wouldn't expect, and I think you've got a choice coming. Someone from my team traced a small ping. Someone's been looking for a woman matching your description. In Dutch databases, private ones. Her stomach turned. You said you just answered a phone, he added, but I think that call may have triggered something much bigger than you know. The room was quiet again, but the silence was different now, heavier, darker, and full of questions she wasn't ready to answer. Not yet. Leela sat motionless, her fingers digging slightly into the armrest of the leather chair. She didn't know whether to speak or stay silent. Every instinct told her to leave, to walk away and forget this conversation ever happened. But something else, maybe the tired part of her that had been running for too long, wanted to stay, wanted to hear the rest. Willem wasn't just a wealthy guest anymore. He was clearly someone who knew how the world behind the headlines worked. He placed a folder on the coffee table between them. It was thin, but her name was typed neatly on the cover. Not the name she used now, her real name. The one she thought she'd left behind in Europe. Where'd you get that? She asked, her voice lower now. I didn't go digging, he said. Someone else did. This landed in a private data exchange group late last night. Your name was flagged. It's quiet for now. But if it spreads, someone will come looking. You know how these things work. It starts silent, then it gets loud. Leela swallowed hard. She remembered all too well how it got loud. The last time, she barely made it out of the country. She had trusted someone she shouldn't have. She thought walking away from that life meant she'd be forgotten, but she was wrong. Why are you helping me? She asked. Willem leaned forward. Because I know what it's like to try to disappear, and I also know when it's no longer safe to keep hiding. Whoever is looking for you, they aren't doing it casually. They're spending money. They want something. and you need to decide if you're going to keep running or if you're going to find out what they're really after. The air in the room felt thinner, as if the city outside the window had suddenly gone quiet too. Lila's thoughts raced. If someone was spending resources to track her down, it wasn't just personal. It meant something had been exposed. A secret. A loose end from her past that hadn't stayed buried. And now it was coming back. Willem handed her a phone, new, untraceable. If you leave now, you might stay ahead of it. But if you want answers, I have a contact who can help. He's in town for 48 hours. Lila took the phone, her hands trembling slightly. Downstairs, the hotel buzzed on as usual, guests checking in, luggage rolling across the floor, soft music playing over the speakers. But up here, everything had changed, and whatever choice she made next would decide whether her past finally caught her, or if she was ready to face it head-on. Lila stared at the phone in her hand, the soft hum of the suite's air conditioning the only sound between them. Her mind raced. 48 hours. That's all the time she had to decide whether to keep disappearing or to chase down the truth that had been quietly shadowing her for years. But just as she opened her mouth to speak, Willem's phone buzzed sharply on the table. He glanced at the screen, and his calm expression hardened in an instant. "Something's changed," he muttered, standing quickly. Lila tensed. What happened? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he tapped a few buttons, pulling up an encrypted message. That contact I mentioned, the one who could help. He was supposed to stay under radar, but someone just tried to intercept him at the airport. They knew his name. They knew his route. Lila's chest tightened. You think they knew he was coming to help me? Willem looked her dead in the eye. I don't believe in coincidence at this level. The quiet danger in his tone chilled her. This wasn't just someone casually looking through old files. This was organized, precise, and whoever they weren't just trying to find her. They were trying to erase anyone who might help her. Then came the second twist. Willem moved toward his laptop and pulled up another file, this one a photo, grainy and zoomed in, but clear enough to recognize the person in it. Lila's breath caught in her throat. It was someone she knew. Someone from her past in Amsterdam. Someone she thought had vanished. He's alive, she whispered. Willem nodded. Not just alive. He's been working with a private firm in Brussels. And guess what? That same firm bought data access to hotel employee profiles across Europe, including this one. Lila stepped back. It didn't make sense. That man, Don, had been involved in the very incident that made her flee. She thought he had disappeared or, worse. But now he was the one possibly hunting her. I think he wants something you have, Willem said, or something he believes you still know. Lila's thoughts spun. She remembered fragments, a hard drive, hidden code, pieces of a project she once translated without asking too many questions. It wasn't supposed to matter. She didn't even know what it was back then. But now, Lila, we're past the point of staying quiet, Willem said. If Don is involved, you're not just a missing piece. You're the last one. Lila's fingers curled tightly around the untraceable phone. Her old life wasn't behind her anymore. It was already here, and closing in fast. The rain had started falling hard by the time Lila stepped out of the hotel's service exit, the hood of her jacket pulled low over her face. Willem's contact, the one who narrowly escaped interception, was waiting in an unmarked car a few blocks away. She had barely slept. Her mind was spinning with memories she tried to forget. Don's voice, the folder of encrypted files, the night everything fell apart. It was all coming back like a storm she couldn't outrun. Inside the car, the man didn't speak. He handed her a small drive, no bigger than a coin. You translated this years ago, he said quietly. You didn't know what it was. But Don thinks you still have access to the key. I don't, she said, almost pleading. I was just hired to convert it, nothing more. Then why is he still chasing you? The man asked. Because he's not after information anymore. He's after control. The original code linked to a shell company that holds access to dormant digital assets, millions in crypto, hidden, untraceable. Your old client died before he could use it, but your version of the translation, it may be the only readable one left. Leela felt her stomach drop. All this time, it wasn't about the translation. It was about what she unknowingly unlocked. They met Willem an hour later at a private tech lab he'd quietly secured under one of his investment arms. There, with trembling hands, Leila loaded the file onto an isolated machine. The translation opened with a string of commands, her old work, familiar but eerie now. One final phrase flashed on screen in Dutch. It was a passphrase, one she barely remembered typing. The screen blinked. Then another line appeared. Asterisk, asterisk, welcome back, Daan. Asterisk, asterisk. Leela froze. Willem stepped forward, eyes narrowed. What is that? Suddenly, the machine locked. The lab lights flickered. The drive, it wasn't a decoder. It was bait, and Leela had just triggered it. Before anyone could react, the side door burst open. Daan stood there, rain-soaked, a twisted smile on his face. You always were the clever one, he said, eyes locked on Leela. Too bad you didn't stay gone. But Willem was faster. A sharp signal from his watch alerted his backup, and within seconds, security swarmed the room. Daan was on the ground, restrained and furious, shouting about the code, the money, the betrayal. Leela stood still, heart racing. It was over. Or so she thought. Later that night, alone in her small room, her phone buzzed. Asterisk, not asterisk, the untraceable one. A single message appeared. Asterisk, asterisk, you have the backup. We know where. This isn't over. Asterisk, asterisk. Her breath caught. Even with Daan gone, someone else was watching. Leela sat on the edge of her bed, the glow of the message still lit on her screen. The words repeated in her mind. Asterisk, this isn't over. Asterisk. But this time, she didn't feel fear the way she once did. Not the kind that made her run. Daan had been the face of the threat, but clearly he wasn't working alone. Still, she had something now that she didn't before, support and clarity. The next morning, Willem met her in a quiet cafe just outside the city, away from cameras, away from eyes. He slid a small black case across the table. Inside was a new identity, fresh documents, a passport, accounts set up in a country far from Europe. But Leela didn't reach for it. I don't want to run anymore, she said. Willem looked at her, surprised but not disappointed. Then you'll need to be ready. She nodded. I am. Together, they arranged to turn the drive over to a secure investigative group Willem had connections with, people not interested in the money, but in stopping the network that had chased Leela for years. The group specialized in digital crimes, dark money, and crypto laundering, exactly the kind of puzzle this code had unlocked. As for the message on her phone, they traced it to a burner device used in Berlin. It was clear the people behind this were spread out, well-financed and careful. But now they knew Leela wasn't just a name on a file. She was awake, watching, and she wasn't alone. Back at the hotel, Leela returned to her job one last time. Quietly, without fuss, she finished her final shift. She folded towels, vacuumed hallways, and smiled at the staff who had no idea the kind of storm she had walked through. As she placed her cleaning cart back in storage, she paused, looking at the uniform hanging on the wall. It had protected her for years, made her invisible, but now she didn't need to hide anymore. A few weeks later, Leela boarded a flight, not to disappear, but to begin again on her own terms. Not as a hotel cleaner or a ghost from a forgotten translation project, but as a woman who survived something no one saw coming. Her story wasn't one of escape, but of choosing when to stop running. And somewhere, deep in a server vault far from where she once lived, her name was removed from a list. Because the people who once hunted her knew, the cleaner they overlooked had become the one thing they didn't expect. A threat, with nothing left to lose.